Good evening, friends. Hello, everyone. Speaking of tonight, our esteemed listener from Tianjin, Li Jiu, he's here again. So this episode, you must listen carefully to this story. It's amazing. Back in '89, in Tianjin, even in the Heping district was a bustling area of Tianjin, and there were many old single-story houses that hadn't been demolished. And at that time, basically, every household lived in those alleyways, old communal housing, or what they called old Western-style houses. As a result, under those circumstances, many people in the north, ordinary folks, like to buy big cabbages and store them at their doorstep. Some families with many members, like those with 6 or 7 children, would store tons of cabbage. Moreover, living density was quite high back then, so it was common for 6 or 7 households to place their cabbages in the same spot. But, well, they would mark their sections. Which one is yours? No one interfered with others. However, if they were all put together like this, it would form something. In the alleyways, as you walked, you might see a mountain of cabbage. My goodness, so many cabbages. That was common back then. Every alley had them, but nowadays, you wouldn't see such a scene. The story we're telling today happened among the cabbage piles. In '89, Li Jiu had a friend. They only met this friend later when they grew up. As a child, this friend was about 6 or 7 years old. One winter evening, some child suggested, "After dinner tonight, let's play hide and seek. Kids love playing that." So, the children at the doorstep all agreed. Finally, at 7:30 p.m., 6 or 7 children gathered. After gathering, they started playing around. They started playing hide and seek. At first, because there weren't many places to hide in the alleyways, the seeker would easily catch them. So everyone got bored. Then, one of the children, a rather clever one, told the other 2 hiding children, "Next round, follow me. It'll take you to a place where you'll never be found." The place he mentioned was the cabbage pile in front of their house. Because the cabbage pile was so huge and tall, there were hollow spaces inside. The children could crawl in through the gaps on the side. As a result, the 2 children heard this and thought, "We can hide in the cabbage pile." So they followed the child who came up with the idea. When they got there, that it was dark, the 3 of them didn't look closely. They went straight to a gap on the side of the cabbage pile and started to crawl in. After crawling in, inside the large piles of cabbage, there were big gaps. 3 people were squatting inside. As soon as they squatted down, the 3 of them heard a rumbling sound from beneath their feet, a rumbling sound. And these 3 kids felt like their feet were stepping on something. They didn't know what. Something soft. Then one of the kids realized what it was and quietly told the other 2, "What is that? There's something down here." Then, one of the kids, I don't know who, reached down and touched the ground. And when they grabbed it, oh my God, a clump of fur. He immediately yelled, "Ah, there's a big dog down here." But as soon as he shouted, before the 3 kids could react and run, a man suddenly crawled out from underneath. The place where the man crawled out from was where the cabbage was piled. In other words, that cabbage wasn't placed directly on the ground. Was there a big wooden board or frame underneath? So the space underneath was very, very narrow. Probably only about 20 centimeters of clearance. But for some reason, this man was stuck underneath, lying down. And 4 boards were stacked together. There was a big gap in the middle. At that moment, the man's head emerged from the gap in the middle. Clang! After his head came out, the children were startled. "Whoa! What is that? What is it?" But before the children could finish shouting, the man became agitated, with an accent he couldn't place. Someone said it sounded like a southern accent. He yelled at the children, "Get out! Get out, you brats! You're standing on my head! It'll kill you. It'll choke you to death. All of this happened very suddenly. The children had no time to react. But when the man yelled, the three kids were terrified. They scrambled out through the small gap on the side, and as they were getting out, one of the kids tore their clothes. Back then, tearing clothes was a big deal. Clothes aren't valuable now, but back then they were. But after tearing the clothes, as the three children just got out, the man inside was still yelling. Now the children could finally calm down and look back at the cabbage pile from the outside. And when they looked, they finally realized that the man's face was pale. Pale to the point of being purple, with no color in his face at all. And what was even scarier was that the man had a mouth full of pitch black teeth. He was baring his teeth and continuing to curse at them. Seeing this, the children wanted to run, but after running a few meters, the three children realized something. The man couldn't get out. Although his upper body had come out, his lower body was clearly stuck between the four boards. So, after running a few meters, the slightly older and braver child and told the other two kids, "What is he doing? Drilling underground. Look how thin it is under the board. Where is he?" Then the other two kids were scared. When the older kid said that, the other kids told the older kid back, "This isn't a person, it's a ghost." Suddenly, all three kids got scared. They couldn't stand there anymore. They turned and ran towards a crowded area. After running to a crowded area, they immediately told the adults. Hide and seek couldn't continue. When the adults heard this, "Oh, what's going on?" During that era, there were spies and all sorts of bad guys and fugitives. At that time, some adults thought if there was a bad guy hiding in the cabbage pile. So the adults were very clever. They called 6 or 7 big guys, each with a weapon, and headed for the cabbage pile. But speaking of this, I must add something. The cabbage pile was placed in a dead-end alley, meaning the man had nowhere to run. If he wanted to come out of the cabbage pile, he must be a bad guy, had have to leave from the alley entrance. At that time, those adults were blocking the alley entrance. So, it was 100% certain that the scary man was still hiding in the cabbage pile. Then, 6 or 7 Tianjin big guys, all over 1.8 meters tall, went over and surrounded the cabbage pile. Someone shone a flashlight into the cabbage pile. Then, one of the men, who was usually quite tough in the alley, grabbed a stick and started hitting the cabbage pile and shouted, "What are you doing? Who are you? Come out." After several shouts, there was no response from inside. Then, several flashlights shone from all directions. Deep into the cabbage pile, they started poking with sticks. After poking for a long time, there was nothing inside. Then, one of the adults got impatient and said, "Oh my, we're also listening to these kids. Are you talking nonsense? Are you talking nonsense?" When the adults said this, the 3 kids felt wronged. They really saw it. He was really inside. But the problem is, how big was the cabbage pile? But when you shine a light through the gaps, it was indeed empty inside. There was no man. But one of the adults, this adult was relatively meticulous, said to the other adults, "Let's move the side a bit and see if there's a strange smell." This person, who was usually sensible in the alley, said this, and the other adults followed suit and moved a stack of cabbage from the left side, and then moved it. After moving it, adults could get to the very center of this cabbage pile, but once they moved it and shone a flashlight inside, they saw. Deep within the cabbage pile, an item of clothing was sandwiched between some cabbages. The clothing was clearly hanging there. So immediately, the adults took a stick and poked the clothing out. They picked it up and laid it on the ground, then shone the flashlight on it. They saw that the back of the clothing had writing on it. Sichuan, something something, machinery factory. Oh, this is strange. What is this thing? Immediately, everyone started speculating about the clothing. Then they discovered that there seemed to be something in the pocket, but no one dared to touch it directly. So they got something like fire tongs used for a stove, and they started to pick at the pocket of the clothing to see what was inside. What exactly was it? And guess what? They pulled an envelope out of the pocket. This envelope had everything, but one most important thing was missing. There was a payslip in it. The payslip showed 12 yuan and 85 cents. But the seal on the payslip indicated it was issued in 1972, and the envelope and clothing clearly looked like they'd been stored for years. The style wasn't from the late 80s. The adults were stunned. One of the adults asked the children, "What exactly did you see?" The children's uncle said, "We saw a ghost, not a person. How could a person hide under cabbages?" The children meant the wooden plank. As I mentioned, the plank was only 20 centimeters thick. How could a person hide under that? But the three children insisted that the man crawled out from under the plank, but no one could figure it out. The adults didn't dare touch the clothing. But meanwhile, more and more people were gathering. Of course, if it were summer, many more people would have come. It was winter, and many came after hearing the commotion downstairs, so more and more people arrived. Then some older people came to see. Everyone was puzzled. When suddenly, an old man among the crowd spoke up. This old man was a longtime resident. He had lived there for ages. He said he moved into this alley when he was 4 or 5. The old man, standing at the back, muttered, "Still looking? Why aren't you leaving? Are you bewitched? This isn't some supernatural event, is it?" Everyone heard him and asked, "What did you say, sir, old man?" Then the old man said, "Ask the old folks by the entrance. They all know. Isn't this about that fugitive from the 72nds? He hid in our alley. It was him." When the old man said this, there was a chorus of boos from the crowd. Many people in their 60s and 70s, 50s and 60s. Everyone knows about this incident from the 1972nds, around the early 70s, I believe. I really can't remember. This fugitive, Hu Tuotao, came from a traveling gang. This gang committed a crime in Sichuan and fled to Tianjin. And it was the middle of winter then. But at that time, there weren't piles of cabbage there. This spot was filled with all sorts of junk. He hid inside. He was probably from the south, so he didn't know how cold it gets at night, or how terrifying northern winters are. And back then, the temperature in Tianjin could easily drop to below -10 degrees, and yet they still found him. It was discovered by people. He had frozen to death in that pile of junk. Then they called the police. The police arrived, the local beat cops from the area. They came to the scene. They knew the neighbors well. One of the beat cops told them, "Hey, you haven't just solved a case. This person is no ordinary criminal. Has a wanted fugitive from Sichuan." Hello and welcome, friends. The story Lan and is about to tell today, we've given it the title Ghost Shave Head. But due to program regulations, we can't use that title, so I've given it a different name for the show. It's called alopecia, commonly known as Ghost Shave Head. This incident, Lan said it happened when he was very, very young. When he was little, Lan was mostly raised by his grandmother, because during holidays, his parents were busy with work, and no one was home to look after him. So when holidays came, he'd be taken to his grandmother's. When Lan An was young, he became good friends with some kids near his grandmother's house. They became great friends. Whenever holidays arrived, they would play together all winter and summer breaks, so they were practically childhood best friends. And in Lan An's memory, he said there were 2 children by his grandmother's house. These 2 children were about his age. They were his closest friends. One was named Xiao Mu, and the other was Xiao Yuan. Xiao Yuan and Xiao Mu basically grew up with me. We experienced many, many things in our childhood, but one incident that happened to Xiao Yuan we will never forget. Even now, when we see Xiao Yuan, we might talk about his past behind his back. But if we see him in person, we absolutely won't bring it up. Because this incident left a deep emotional scar on him. It left him traumatized. This happened when I was probably 12 years old. Or maybe 11. I really can't recall. It was during the summer vacation of that year. That summer vacation started. I had been staying at my grandmother's for about 8 or 9 days. Then one day, Xiao Yuan came to find me and said, "Hey, do you know what cricket fighting is? Do you believe me? This one cricket we caught. It could sell for tens of thousands in the city." Lan never heard of this mythical thing as a kid, but had heard of cricket fighting. But I really couldn't understand how a single cricket could sell for tens of thousands. But I'll tell you this, Xiao Yuan wasn't lying. These crickets are still expensive now. Some can go for 200,000 to 300,000. So all of a sudden, our Lan An got really interested. He discussed it with Xiao Yuan for a long time. As a result, they decided that Xiao Yuan would lead them in the afternoon to catch treasure crickets on the mountain. Of course, ordinary crickets are easy to find, but finding one that's valuable, that can sell for a good price, that's very hard to find. Xiao Yuan had promised Lan An himself at the time that he knew a lot about it and could find them. So that day, the 2 brothers arranged to meet Xiao Mu, and it really happened. That afternoon, around 1 p.m., the 3 brothers set off from their grandmother's house. After setting off, the 2 of them, along with our Lan An, went straight to the back mountain of their grandmother's house. That back mountain, grandmother had told Lan An a long time ago not to go up there to play. It was dangerous. But at this moment, Lan and Obit had completely forgotten his grandmother's warning. But after getting up the mountain, after walking for a while, Lan An started to regret it, because he said they hadn't walked far before they came across a small grave mound, and we hadn't walked for long. When I saw a human skull, it was obvious that this area was a graveyard, and my grandmother's family had a custom of burying people on the mountain. So after walking for a bit, Lan An said, "Can we go up this mountain? Why do I feel like it's so scary? Why are there so many dead people?" But Xiao Yuan and Xiao Mu didn't care at all. They told Lan An, "Hey, you city kids are so timid. We play here every day. Nothing happens. Just come with me." After hearing this, Lan and felt like he was being dragged along. He had no choice but to go, so he forced himself to keep walking. After walking for another 15 or 20 minutes, they suddenly heard a very loud cricket chirp from a grassy pit to the side. As soon as they heard the chirp, Xiao Yuan said, "Hey, be quiet. Let me listen." "Ah. Wow, this is a good one. Yes." Without even thinking, he ran towards the grassy area where the cricket was chirping. He rushed in. But when he rushed in, it was clear he missed. It jumped and ran further away. Then, and Xiao Mu and Lan desperately chased upwards, chasing like mad. And this boom? Oh, many things were blasted out of the ground, grasshoppers and such. And small insects. It was just a mess. Everything was out of sorts. So the three of them wasted their effort here. They didn't catch any crickets, but they caught a few grasshoppers. As a result, Xiao Yuan said at this point, "You guys are doing it wrong. Don't catch them like this next time. You two are like idiots. You scared all the crickets away." Then Xiao Yuan explained to them exactly how to do it. As they were talking halfway through, suddenly Xiao Yuan said, "Hey, you two stay there. I need to pee. Just hold it in." After saying that, he turned and hadn't walked 2 steps. He started peeing towards the trees nearby, peeing. But just as Xiao Yuan started peeing, the urine was coming out. Lan shouted from behind, "Hey, pee over there. That's a grave." But it was too late. The urine landed directly on the grave. It was that chaotic then. Everything happened so suddenly. Xiao Yuan didn't do it intentionally. But there was nothing to be done. It had already happened. He had urinated on it. But Xiao Yuan himself didn't care. He thought it was fine. What's the big deal? We pee here every day. But Lan was scared. Lan felt it was disrespectful. Disrespectful to the deceased. He remembered hearing his grandparents and grandmother say this. So he felt they couldn't stay here. "Shouldn't we leave quickly?" But Xiao Yuan and Xiao Mu refused to leave. They insisted on pulling Lan further up the mountain. So Lan had no choice at that time. He continued to follow them up the mountain. But Lan said the more they went, the more wrong it felt. "I always feel like it's eerie around us. And I always feel like someone is following us." So around 3 p.m. that afternoon, Lan couldn't take it anymore. He told them, "No matter what, we have to go down. Let's leave quickly. If we go further up, my grandmother finds out, she'll definitely send me home." So Xiao Yuan and Xiao Mu had no choice. They accompanied Lan down the mountain that day. After going down the mountain, Lan returned to his grandmother's house, pretending he hadn't gone anywhere. He lied to his grandmother, "We just played nearby." And then, he put the day's events out of his mind. Even at night, watching cartoons, eating delicious food. If you asked Lan what he did in the afternoon, Lan couldn't even remember. But when the next day came, woke up around 7 a.m., maybe a little before, Grandma then woke Lena up. "Xiao, AI. Get up. Grandma has something to ask you." Lena heard this, still groggy.